His name was not supposed to matter. That's what I told myself the first time I saw him. Standing across the crowded room at a charity gala my boyfriend, Marcus, had dragged me to. It was one of those events where everyone smiled too wide and laughed too loud, where the champagne was expensive but tasted like obligation, and where I spent most of the night nodding along to conversations about hedge funds and summer homes in the Hamptons. I hated these things. I had always hated them. But Marcus thrived in this world, this polished universe of wealth and connections, and I had learned over 3 years of loving him to smile and nod and pretend I belonged. The truth was, I didn't belong. I was Clara, the girl from a small town in Ohio who had stumbled into New York City on a scholarship and never quite lost the feeling that someone would eventually tap me on the shoulder and ask me to leave. I worked as a graphic designer for a nonprofit, a job that paid barely enough to cover my share of the cramped Brooklyn apartment I shared with 2 roommates, but it fed my soul in ways that Marcus's world never could. Marcus was a corporate lawyer, handsome in that sharp, polished way, with a jawline that could cut glass and ambitions that stretched all the way to the corner office on the top floor. He loved me. I knew that. He loved me the way you love a painting you've chosen for your living room. Something beautiful to display, something that complemented the life he was building. But he never asked me what I dreamed about. He never wondered if the life he was designing had any room for the messy, complicated, passionate parts of me I kept hidden away. That night at the gala, I had excused myself to find air. The ballroom was suffocating, thick with perfume and ambition, and I needed a moment away from Marcus's hand on the small of my back, guiding me from one important conversation to the next. I wandered through a set of glass doors onto a terrace overlooking the city, the skyline a glittering tapestry of lights, and that's where I found him. He was leaning against the stone balustrade, a cigarette burning forgotten between his fingers, staring out at the city with an expression that looked like longing. He wasn't handsome in the way Marcus was handsome. His beauty was rougher, more dangerous, the kind that crept up on you and settled into your bones before you realized what was happening. Dark hair fell across his forehead, and his eyes, when he finally turned to look at me, were the color of whiskey in sunlight, warm and disarming and terribly, terribly knowing. "I'm sorry," I said, suddenly aware that I had been staring. I didn't mean to interrupt. He smiled, and it was like watching a storm begin. "You didn't interrupt. I was just escaping." He gestured with a cigarette. "Not my scene." I laughed, a sound that surprised me. "Mine neither. My boyfriend loves it, though." The words slipped out before I could stop it, a territorial marker, a warning to myself as much as to him. His smile didn't falter. "Boyfriend, right." He took a long drag from his cigarette, his eyes never leaving mine. "Lucky guy." The air between us shifted, thickened with something I refused to name. I should have gone back inside. I should have found Marcus, let him pull me back into his world of handshakes and promises. But I didn't. I stayed on that terrace, and I talked to the stranger with the whiskey-colored eyes. And by the time the night ended, I knew 2 things with absolute certainty. His name was Julian, and my life, the careful, comfortable life I had built with Marcus, was already beginning to crack. Julian was a photographer, not the kind who shot weddings or corporate headshots, but the real kind. The kind who disappeared into forgotten corners of the world and came back with images that broke your heart. He had just returned from 6 months in Southeast Asia, he told me, and he was only at the gala because a friend's work was being showcased. He didn't own a suit, he confessed with that devastating smile, and the one he was wearing had been borrowed. He was 34 and married and moored and utterly, completely alive in a way that made my carefully ordered existence feel like a prison. We talked for an hour on that terrace. He told me about a sunrise he had photographed in Cambodia, the way the light had turned the ruins of an ancient temple into liquid gold. I told him about my work, the tiny nonprofit that tried to make art accessible to children in underserved schools, and the way his face lit up with genuine interest made my heart stutter. He didn't ask me about my ambitions in the way people usually did, as a prelude to telling me their own. He just listened, really listened, his head tilted, his eyes never leaving my face, as if everything I said mattered. When I finally went back inside, Marcus barely looked up from his conversation with a man who owned 3 hotels. "There you are," he he said, his hand finding my waist automatically. I was starting to worry, but he hadn't been. He hadn't even noticed I was gone. Julian and I exchanged numbers that night. It happened so casually, so naturally, that I almost convinced myself it was innocent. He wanted to see my portfolio, he said. One wanted to see his photographs. It was professional, a connection between two artists. That's what I told myself as I fell asleep that night, Marcus's warm body beside me. Julian's name already a secret I held close to my heart. The first time we met alone, it was at a small cafe in the West Village, a place Julian knew with mismatched furniture and the best coffee in the city. I brought a folder of my work and he spread the images across the table, studying each one with an intensity that made my cheeks flush. He pointed out things I had never noticed, the way a particular line drew the eye, the emotion hidden in a shadow, and by the time we finished our coffee, I felt like he had seen parts of me I had never shown anyone. After that, it became a pattern. Stolen afternoons in quiet corners of the city, walks through the park where his hand would occasionally brush mine, conversations that stretched for hours and left me breathless. I told myself it was friendship, a connection between kindred spirits, but the lies grew thinner with each meeting. I started inventing reasons to be away from Marcus, late nights at work, drinks with friends I hadn't seen in years, and he believed me, always believed me, because it had never occurred to him that I might lie. The guilt was a constant companion, a dull ache behind my ribs that flared whenever Marcus looked at me with those trusting eyes. He was good, Marcus, so fundamentally, unquestionably good. He remembered to call my mother on her birthday. He brought me soup when I was sick and never complained about the hours I spent working. He had a plan, a future mapped out with precision, and I was supposed to be part of it. We would marry into years, buy an apartment in the city, have two children, a boy and a girl, and grow old together in a house by the sea. It was a beautiful dream. It was his dream, and I had never realized until I met Julian that it wasn't mine. The first kiss happened on a rainy Tuesday in Julian's studio. He had invited me to see his latest work, photographs from a series he was doing on forgotten places in the city, abandoned buildings and empty lots that held ghosts of what used to be. His studio was in a converted warehouse in Brooklyn, all exposed brick and northern light. And the moment I stepped inside, I felt like I had entered another world. His photographs covered every wall, images so beautiful and so sad they made my chest ache. He showed me his favorites, telling me the story behind each one. And as we stood in front of a photograph of a crumbling theater, its velvet seats covered in dust, he fell silent. When I turned to look at him, his face was inches from mine, his whiskey-colored eyes dark with something I had been avoiding for weeks. "Clara," he whispered, and my name on his lips was a prayer. I should have stepped away. I should have laughed, made a joke, broken the tension that crackled between us like electricity. But I didn't. I stood there frozen, wanting, and when he leaned in, when his lips finally met mine, I didn't pull back. I kissed him and the world dissolved. His hands found my waist, pulling me closer, and I melted into him, into the heat and the hunger and the terrifying, glorious rightness of it. When we finally broke apart, both of us breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "I've wanted to do that since the moment I saw you," he said. I didn't answer. I couldn't, because if I spoke, I would have to admit the truth I had been running from for weeks. I had wanted it too. After that, there was no going back. The affair consumed me, a fire that burned brighter and hotter with each passing day. We met whenever we could, in his studio, in cheap hotels, in the back of his car parked on quiet streets overlooking the river. With Julian, I was someone else entirely. I was passionate and spontaneous, reckless and free. He made me feel beautiful in a way Marcus never had, not because Marcus didn't find me attractive, but because Julian saw me, really saw me, the messy, complicated, imperfect woman I kept hidden from the world. He told me stories about his travels, the places he had been and the people he had loved and lost. He photographed me in the golden light of late afternoon, capturing angles of my face I had never seen, and when he showed me the images, I cried at the beauty he had found in me. He made me laugh until my stomach hurt, made me feel things I had forgotten I could feel, and with every moment we shared, the life I had built with Marcus felt more and more like a cage I needed to escape. But the guilt never fully disappeared. It was there in the quiet moments, in the space between heartbeats, in the way Marcus's face would light up when I walked through the door after a night with Julian. He never suspected, never questioned the late nights and the distracted silences, because he trusted me, completely, utterly, without reservation. That trust was a knife in my chest, twisting slowly, and I hated myself for the pain I knew I would eventually cause. 3 months into the affair, something shifted. Julian started talking about the future, about the possibility of us, really us, without secrets and lies. He wanted me to leave Marcus, to stop hiding, to build a life together. And I wanted it too, God. I wanted it with a desperation that terrified me. But the thought of hurting Marcus, of destroying the life we had built, paralyzed me. I loved Julian. I knew that now with a certainty that left no room for doubt. But I also loved Marcus, or at least, I loved the version of myself that existed in his eyes. The good girl, the reliable one, the woman who didn't break promises and shatter hearts. The night everything fell apart, it was raining. Of course it was raining, as if the universe had decided to provide the appropriate soundtrack for the end of my world. Marcus and I were supposed to have dinner with his parents, a weekly ritual I had grown to dread. But I claimed a migraine and stayed home. In truth, I had spent the afternoon with Julian, and I was to rot, too exposed, to sit through hours of polite conversation about weddings and babies and futures. That felt like a lie. I was in the shower when Marcus came home early. I didn't hear him come in, didn't hear him call my name, didn't know anything was wrong until I stepped out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel, and found him sitting on the edge of our bed, my phone in his hand. The look on his face stopped me cold. It wasn't anger. It was something worse, something I had never seen in his eyes before. It was devastation, pure and complete, the kind that hollows you out and leaves nothing behind. Marcus, I whispered, my voice barely a sound. He held up my phone, the screen glowing with a message from Julian. I love you. When can I see you again? The words, so innocent in one context, so damning in another, burned into my brain. How long? His voice was flat, empty, a shell of itself. I wanted to lie. I wanted to deny it, to explain, to twist the truth into something he could survive. But I was so tired of lying. I was so tired of the weight of secrets, of the constant, grinding guilt, of the split second of panic every time my phone buzzed. So I told him the truth. 3 months. He closed his eyes, and I watched a single tear escape, trailing down his cheek before he wiped it away with a hand that trembled. 3 months, he repeated, as if saying it aloud might make it real. 3 months of lying to my face. 3 months of coming home to me after you'd been with him. I had no words. There were no words for what I had done, no explanation that would make it right. I stood there, dripping wet, shivering despite the warmth of the apartment, and watched the man I had loved for 3 years fall apart in front of me. Who is he? Marcus asked, his voice cracking. Do I know him? No. He's a photographer. I met him at the gala. The gala. A bitter laugh escaped him, hollow and broken. The night you disappeared for an hour. I thought you were getting air. I thought you were just overwhelmed. He shook his head, his jaw tightening. You were with him. Even then, you were with him. Marcus, I'm so sorry. Don't. The word was sharp, a blade that cut through my apology. Don't you dare say you're sorry. Sorry is for forgetting to pick up milk. Sorry is for being late to dinner. You don't get to be sorry for this. He stood up, and I flinched, but he just walked past me, into the bathroom, and emerged a moment later with a duffel bag. He started pulling clothes from the closet, shoving them in with rough, mechanical movements, and I watched, frozen, as he dismantled our life piece by piece. What are you doing? I finally managed. I'm leaving. He didn't look at me. I can't be here. I can't look at you. Marcus, please, let's talk about this. Let's talk. He whirled on me then, and for the first time, I saw the anger beneath the devastation, a wildfire of rage that had been barely contained. You want to talk? What is there to say, Clara? You've been fucking someone else for 3 months. 3 months of lying, of sneaking around, of making me feel crazy for thinking something was wrong. And I ignored it. I trusted you. I loved you. His voice broke on the last word, and he turned away, his shoulders shaking. I reached for him, my hand hovering just above his arm, but I couldn't bring myself to touch him. I had no right. I had given up that right the first time I kissed Julian. I never meant to hurt you, I whispered whispered the lamest, most pathetic words in the English language. He laughed again, that horrible, hollow sound. You never meant to hurt me. You just fucked another man for 3 months and lied about it every single day. But you never meant to hurt me. He zipped the bag with violent finality. That's almost funny. Almost. He walked to the door, and I followed him, my bare feet cold on the hardwood floor. Marcus, please, don't go. We can work through this. We can. He stopped with his hand on the doorknob, his back to me. There's nothing to work through, Clara. You killed us 3 months ago. You killed us, and you've been dancing on the grave ever since. He opened the door, and the rain swept in, cold and wet. I hope he was worth it. I hope he's everything I wasn't. Because you just lost the one person in this world who would have done anything for you. The door closed behind him, and I was alone. The days that followed were a blur of pain and numbness. I called Marcus 100 times, sent texts he never answered, left voicemails that dissolved into sobs. His mother called me once, her voice cold as ice, to tell me that he was staying with them and that I should never contact him again. She didn't ask for my side of the story. She didn't want to hear it. And honestly, what side was there? I had no defense, no justification, nothing but a broken heart and a mountain of regret. Julian came to me that night after Marcus left. I called him, sobbing, and he was at my door within the hour. He held me while I cried, told me it would be okay, that we had each other now, that this was the beginning of something real, and for a few days I believed him. I let myself believe that the pain was worth it, that the destruction of my old life was the price of a new one, a better one, a life where I could be truly myself. But the cracks started showing almost immediately. Julian wasn't used to being with someone, not really. He had spent years alone, moving from place to place, answerable to no one, and the reality of a relationship, of needing to be present and available and reliable, chafed against his nature. He would disappear for hours, not answering his phone, and when he came back, he would be full of apologies and excuses that sounded hollow. He forgot my birthday. He showed up late to dinners. He looked at me sometimes with an expression I couldn't read, something between love and panic, as if he wasn't quite sure what to do with me now that he had me. 3 weeks after Marcus left, I found the photographs. They were in Julian's studio, tucked away in a drawer I had never thought to open. I was looking for a specific print he had promised me, and instead, I found a stack of images that stopped my heart. Women, dozens of them in various states of undress in various poses. Their faces lit with the same glow Julian had once captured in me. Some of them were old, dated years ago. Some of them were recent, dated within the last few months while he had been with me. I was still holding them when Julian walked in. He stopped in the doorway, his face going pale, and in that moment, I saw the truth written clearly in his eyes. I wasn't special. I wasn't the one who had broken through his walls and captured his heart. I was just another subject, another beautiful thing to be photographed and discarded when the novelty wore off. Clara, he started, reaching for me. Don't. I stepped back, clutching the photographs like evidence. How many, Julian? How many since me? He didn't answer, and he didn't have to. The silence was answer enough. I left his studio that day and never went back. He called, texted, showed up at my apartment, but I refused to see it. The love I had felt for him, the all-consuming fire that had burned down my life, turned dash in my chest. He hadn't saved me. He had used me, the same way I had used Marcus, and I was left with nothing but the wreckage of my choices. 6 months passed. I moved out of the apartment I had shared with Marcus, found a smaller place in a different neighborhood, threw myself into my work with a desperation that bordered on obsession. I stopped dating, stopped hoping, stopped believing in the kind of love that could save you. I went through the motions of living, but inside, I was hollow, a shell of the woman I used to be. And then, on a cold Tuesday in November, I saw Marcus. I was in a coffee shop near my office waiting for my order when the door opened and he walked in. My heart stopped, then started again at triple speed. He looked different. Thinner, maybe, and tired around the eyes, but also somehow lighter, as if he had finally set down a weight he had been carrying for too long. He was with someone, a woman with dark curly hair and a warm smile, and as I watched, he said something that made her laugh, a real laugh, the kind that comes from somewhere deep. He saw me then. Our eyes met across the crowded coffee shop, and then for a moment, everything else fell away. I saw the memories flicker in his gaze, the pain and the love and the loss, all of it still there, still real. But then the woman touched his arm, asking him something, and he looked away, back to her, back to his new life, his new chance at happiness. My name was called for my order, and I turned away, collecting my coffee with hands that shook. When I looked back, they were gone. I walked home in the cold November air, the coffee growing cold in my hands. And I thought about choices, about the paths we take and the ones we leave behind, about the people we love and the people we hurt, about the girl I used to be and the woman I had become. I had wanted passion, and I had found it, only to discover that passion without foundation is just a fire that burns until there's nothing left. I had wanted to be seen, truly seen, and I had been, but only through a lens, only as a subject, only until the next beautiful thing came along. Marcus had found someone who would never hurt him the way I did. I hope she knew how lucky she was. I hope she appreciated the steady, reliable, fundamentally good man I had been too blind to value. I hoped she loved him the way he deserved to be loved, fully and truly and without reservation. As for me, I walked home alone to my small apartment, to the life I had built from the ashes of the one I destroyed. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if I would ever love again or if I deserved to. But I knew with a certainty that came from hard-won experience that some mistakes can't be undone, that some wounds leave scars that never fully heal, and that the person you become on the other side of heartbreak is someone you have to learn to live with, even if you don't always like her. I unlocked my door, stepped inside, and closed it behind me. The silence wrapped around me like an old friend, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't fight it. I sat down on my couch in the quiet of my own company, and I let myself feel it all. The regret, the sorrow, the loneliness, and beneath it all, a tiny, fragile spark of something that might eventually become hope. The journey back to yourself, I was learning, was the longest one of all.